I always do that. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire. What is going on, you beautiful bookworms, and welcome back to another episode of Bookmarks with Bump. I'm your host, Bump, the jackass of all trades, master of none, and I am fresh off a Philly cheesesteak. The odds that I'm going to crash out during this podcast are probably minus 5,000 at this point. I have really been itching for a Philly cheesesteak ever since Philadelphia won the Super Bowl. I figured this would be my way to pay homage to the team who took it all home. So I had one. No shame at all. I deserve it. I'm right now in the prep week before beginning training for my first half marathon of the year. It probably won't be my first race of the year, but it will definitely be my first big one, the one that I'm really gearing towards, and I'm feeling confident about that. Just the body feels prime right now. I don't really have a hitch in my giddy up. I healed my messed up foot. My right foot was giving me a little bit of an issue after the Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl game. I bounced back from that, and here I am dealing with indigestion from that Philly cheesesteak I talked about earlier. But nonetheless, this is a variety podcast where we banter about all sorts of different topics, from health and fitness to mindset to addiction, all things that I am very well grounded and experienced in, being a 7-year sober addict, being a personal trainer with my certification from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, being just an overall, Department of Labor tradesman. I do it all, man. And there's only one reason to do it all, because the excuses never add up to amount to anything. We talked about that all last week. Got some really good feedback on last week's episode, and it kind of rolled right into the week that was. We got pounded with snow yet again last weekend, so much so that we lost power in certain places in the Northwest Connecticut region, one of which being my buddy's house. I try to spend time with my best friends every week, go over, have dinner with them and their son, who is also one of my best friends. Nonetheless, I was over there for dinner and the power went out, and we had a nice candlelit dinner, and Edison would ask us to tell stories, and then whenever whoever's turn it was popped up, he would just decide to tell the story himself, especially when they asked for suggestions. Me, on the other hand, I don't need a suggestion. I got a story stowed away at all times, so I begin to tell my story. And he's asking me questions about my story. Is he questioning my story? Is he questioning the characters? I'm not really sure. Shortly into answering the questions, what does he do? He decides to just let every bit of food that was in his mouth out. He wasn't throwing up, but he made it seem that way. He baby birded right onto his own plate and kept it moving. And listen, maybe this is why kids say the darndest things. Kids do the darndest things. Whatever their reasoning behind it, it was a particularly interesting moment. Nonetheless, what a kid. What a kid. This kid blows my mind. He's so inquisitive and he's very intuitive, and he kind of likes to run the show in a way. He does direct people, and he gives good reasoning behind his direction, so it's hard to say no to the boy. Nonetheless, moving forward, things in the gym are going swimmingly. I just got back from my stretch. Thursday is an off day for me. It always is. I use Thursday to either get my hair cut, go and get a stretch for my buddy Eli, or I just do the podcast. And so here I am after a stretch and a Philly cheesesteak, ready to rip and roll into the podcast. The last podcast before I dive into another 12-week training session, training for a half marathon in Mystic. I'm looking forward to that because it's right on the ocean. And like I said, I'm feeling very confident about it. And I wonder if it has anything to do with this thread here that I labeled as Unshakable Confidence, put out by Terry Kim at Project Kim. And as always, all the threads are linked in the description. Please follow along as I'm reading. There's always good content that I'm not able to pull up
that go through these threads, and it's important for you all to see, and that's exactly what I'm sharing it for. These are all things that we could use moving forward to become the better or best versions of ourselves. The thread goes on to say, your performance-based identity is destroying you. It leads to constant anxiety and total burnout. Confidence only comes from one place, and it's not what you think. Here's how to build unshakable confidence from the Simon Sinek podcast, backed by science. Meet Mike Gervais, performance psychologist to elite athletes and CEOs. For 25 years, he's studied how identity shapes performance. His most profound insight came from working with the Seattle Seahawks for 9 seasons. Something he discovered changes everything about confidence. Our society has created a dangerous trap. From an early age, we're taught to tie our worth to our achievements. We live in a performance-based culture. Our identity becomes wrapped in what we do rather than who we are. When your identity is tied to performance, you live in constant fear. As social creatures, we're wired for belonging. Being rejected by the tribe was once a death sentence, and our ancient brain still operates this way. We respond to rejection in predictable ways. We conform to fit in, we comfort our values, and we cut off relationships. It's not about fear of death, it's about the fear of being traumatized. The problem runs deeper. Your job title, achievements, and status define your worth. This leads to constant scanning. Are my numbers good? Are people impressed? Am I doing enough? The key is understanding how confidence actually works. It's not about waiting for external validation. It's about the relationship between two things, how you perceive the challenge and how you perceive your skills. Think about elite athletes. Even at the biggest moments, they talk to themselves. You got this. You can do it. Because they understand confidence isn't about being the best. The breakthrough comes when you shift from am I good enough to what am I trying to contribute? Bam. Big message, and I'll stick a pin in that thread as we get back to it. When your purpose is clear and bigger than you, identity fades away. This explains why true masters seem paradoxical. They're humble yet confident, driven yet relaxed, successful yet grounded. They've separated identity from performance. Here's how to build unshakable confidence. 1. Know your purpose. 2. Practice credible self-talk. 3. Focus on contribution over validation. 4. Build skills intentionally, but there's more. You must create space for growth, thoughts that can create space. I can learn from this. I'm growing. This is interesting. Thoughts that constrict. Don't mess up. What will they think? The ultimate paradox? When you stop trying to prove your worth, you perform better. When you focus on contribution over validation, anxiety fades. When your identity isn't tied to outcomes, true confidence emerges. The real power of unshakable confidence, it compounds over time. As you focus on contribution over validation, something magical happens. Your impact grows exponentially. And truer words cannot be said. And this is a huge, huge, huge anchor that I've tied myself to for the last 6 months. Especially it's not necessarily a performance-based job, but in a way it is. My trade as a tool setter can sometimes be impingent upon how much production I'm doing in a certain press, but it's not always production as far as parts go, especially now with an acquisition period where we're bringing in tools from a different company, yada, 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 a whole bunch of manufacturing jargon that nobody really cares about. The figuring of these things out has been what's made my name where I'm at. It's not just the fact that I'm making parts or making these tools run. It's the fact that I'm understanding what goes into the functionality of the tool. And that has been my contribution to the company so far. And it's paved a major way for me in the last, even just as little as 3 months. As you know, as I've talked about, I've been working 7 days a week lately, and that's because of my contribution. Basically, I've become a specialist in a certain area, and that makes me very valuable. But that's not what I hold my value to. My value is held to the fact that I'm able to comprehend what's going on here when a lot of people aren't able to yet. And being the person to explain it time after time after time has been what's built my confidence up when it comes to inside of those 4 press walls. I did always tie myself a lot to my performance in a race. But it's not just me going out and being the best or being the fastest or winning my division that's boosted my confidence. It's what I've been able to contribute to other people who never thought that they could. The other day, a friend of mine sent me a video of me from 7 years ago, and my God, I saw that and I was shocked. I was shocked at the person that I was. I was working at a pizza shop in the time. Basically as a manager there, and at the time I was cleaning up shop and I had a mop in my hand, and I couldn't recognize that person in the camera. And that's what people say to me. I can't recognize you. What you've done is amazing. What you've done has inspired me. If I had $1 for every time that somebody told me that I inspired them, I wouldn't need money. I don't want money. You know, what's important to me is the fact that I'm impacting these people. And being able to be an impact on people is what's kept me confident. It's so hard to take compliments. It really is. So I try to just push it away from me and say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that's really my go-to response. But there is so much confidence that comes from being the person to inspire and grabbing a hold of that contribution. We can't just value our lives, value how we feel based on what other people are saying, period, but more specifically, our bosses or our peers. You know, everybody's going to, well, not everybody. Every once in a while, you run into a good boss who pats you on the back or who understands, who's been through the trenches, who gets how things work. But more often than not, you won't find that. You'll find somebody who's been in a supervisor position for a very long time and has lost touch of what goes into the trade. You're going to run into that always. So they're always going to have these expectations that are found on paper. But what's on paper finds a very hard, it's hard to translate what's on paper to real life. Often, more often than not, as a matter of fact. So, before I move forward into the next thread, I just have to say, like, it's not based on your boss. It's not based on your peers. It's based on you and what you are doing. And if you're soaking it in, understand that you're in the right place. And things take time. You have to be patient, but you have to be persistent as well. You can't just sit back and say, hey, whatever happens, happens. You have to make things happen as you move and just keep moving. That's always the moral of the story, is to just keep moving. But move with your head held high, because what you're doing day in and day out, if you're giving 100% of your effort, is always going to be something that's going to boost your confidence. We have a history lesson. I found this thread to be quite interesting because history class didn't teach you everything about the world. History is often written by the victors. So I found this thread and it caught my eye right away, and you'll probably know why in a second. Other than just the cool pictures that are included with the thread, there's a couple fun facts before the thread even unfolds. So Big Brain History put out a thread that says, history class didn't teach the most profound lessons. Philly cheesesteak, I'm telling you. I got about 45 minutes until I explode, so let's get on with it. History class didn't teach the most profound lessons. Like how the French held trials against real rats in 1510. Like how 3,000 rabbits attacked Napoleon at a celebration. And like how King Henry VIII employed 4 men to wipe him after taking a dump. I wonder what their salary was. I hope it wasn't celery. Thread of history's untold fun facts. Let's pop the cap on this Snapple, huh? The Great Peeing Hero Dog. During World War II, a brave Great Dane named Juliana saved her owner's house by urinating on a German incendiary bomb that had crashed through the roof. The Blue Cross Medal was awarded for quick-thinking heroism. Shout out to the Great Dane. Napoleon's rabbit disaster in 1807. Napoleon Bonaparte arranged a rabbit hunt to celebrate a diplomatic treaty. 3,000 rabbits were gathered for the occasion. When released, instead of hopping away, the rabbits charged towards Napoleon, forcing the emperor to flee to his carriage. So we have this great history general, Napoleon Bonaparte, who got scared away by some rabbits. Were they rabbit? What is a rabbit hunt even? Like, so he gathered 3,000 rabbits. and thought that they would just all start running away. This sounds like some Bohemian Grove shit. The Oxford whoa, okay. I don't know. The Oxford Aztec timeline. The University of Oxford began teaching students in 1096, predating the Aztec Empire by about 229 years. When Oxford was already a mature institution celebrating its 300th anniversary, the Aztecs were just beginning to build their empire in 1325. Wow. So you're looking at two different sides of the world here, right over the pond. And we were in very primitive stages in the Western Hemisphere, according to this fact. It's interesting. They were all buttoned up and established in a massive institution, and these guys were just throwing rocks around. The world's most successful pirate in history was a lady named Xing Shi. She was a prostitute in China until the commander of the Red Flag Fleet bought and married her, but her husband considered her his equal, and she became an active pirate commander in the fleet. How cool! This is the original Captain Save-A-Ho. The Samurai Lincoln Connection. The last Japanese samurai era, Edo period, overlapped with the invention of the fax machines. Wow. All right. Let's start this one over. The Samurai Lincoln Connection. The last Japanese samurai era, the Edo period, overlapped with the invention of the fax machine's predecessor, the electric printing telegraph. Theoretically, a samurai could have sent a message to Abraham Lincoln, as the samurai era lasted until 1868. I wonder what happened after the samurais. The great samurais of Japan, how were they defeated? Must have been the guns. And this is what I was talking about. And this could be a proving connector to my theory. I've always said that guns were invented by a sore loser who was sick of getting slashed by swords. And where are the samurais? The samurais could have existed forever, honestly, but apparently not. Once the gun came around, you can't outslice a bullet. The great vodka shortage. When World War II ended, Moscow's celebration was so intense because they were a big part in ending World War II. Wow. The entire city ran out of vodka in less than 24 hours, specifically 22 hours. Love you. This remains one of the largest recorded celebrations in history. The rat trial. In 1510, French authorities put rats on trial for destroying barley fields. The rat's court-appointed lawyer argued that his clients couldn't appear in court due to the danger posed by local cats. Surprisingly, the rats were acquitted. Right now, we're going through a huge clean out of the government. We're trying to make it more efficient as far as spending goes. Imagine how much money they wasted on this. What do they call those sham trials? This is a real rat race here. But anyway, Cromwell's war on pie. Oliver Cromwell banned pie eating in England in 1644, considering it a pagan form of pleasure. The ban lasted for 16 years, making pie eating an act of political rebellion. Why did Oliver Cromwell ban pie eating? Unless if he was the RFK Jr. of his time, I don't understand why anybody. What did this person have against pie? And was it dessert pie? What about chicken pot pie? Oliver Cromwell leaves a lot of questions unanswered for me. Moving forward, oh, here we go. Henry VIII. The Royal Bottom Wipers. That's a very glorifying way to put it. Philly cheesesteak is messing me up right now. I should have waited till after the podcast, but listen. When a dog is gonna cheat, the dog's gotta eat. So that's it. Had a nice little cheat meal there. I ran the Philly. The Philly special. They're calling me Nick Foles right now. The Royal Bottom Wipers. King Henry VIII employed 4 different men as grooms of stool. Oh, God. Like, this is what drunk on power is. If you want to know drunk on power, it's literally employing grooms of stool. That is ridiculous. Okay. He employed 4 different men as grooms of stool, whose job was to clean him after using the toilet. Remarkably, all 4 of these men were knighted for their service, making it one of history's most peculiar paths to knighthood. Sir Shitstir, your meal is ready. Caligula's senator house. Roman Emperor Caligula was so fond of his horse, Insiditus? Who knows really what these names are? Like, Caligula's name couldn't also not even be Caligula. These are Roman names. These are ancient. Anyway, Insiditus, he was so fond of his horse that he gave him a marble stall, ivory manger, and purple blankets. Now, purple, the silk that they used for purple was more expensive back in the day. That's why it was a color of royalty, which is why it's my favorite color. He also allegedly attempted to make him a consul. The horse lived better than most Romans of the time. Yeah, probably. I mean, he probably wasn't sticking his big horse peen and his horse horn in places it shouldn't be. The battlefield dentures. Before the 19th century, high-quality dentures were often made from the teeth collected from dead soldiers on battlefields. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 led to such a surge in available teeth that these dentures became known as the Waterloo teeth. There were female gladiators in ancient Rome. A female gladiator was called a gladiatrix, plural. The plural indication of that would be gladiatresses. They were extremely rare, unlike their male counterparts. And this is not unbelievable. A gladiatrix, when I close my eyes and picture a gladiatrix, I picture, God, a dream, at least 5'8", at the short side, probably 5'7", 5'8", just absolutely stacked from the hips down, big shoulders, an athletic build. Sounds like an Amazon. China would have been a gladiatrix. Ketchup was sold in the 1830s as medicine. Ketchup. The cigarettes pushed ketchup out, didn't they? In 1834, it was sold as a cure for an upset stomach by an Ohio physician named John Cook. It wasn't popularized as a condiment until the late 19th century. Now, here's one I did know. Abraham Lincoln is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Not the WWE Hall of Fame, but in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. He had 300 matches over a 12-year period and only 1 documented defeat. Standing at 6'4", he practiced catch-as-catch-can wrestling, a style with very few rules that was popular on the American frontier. Now, this is a amateur style of wrestling. This isn't your WWE smashing people over the head with chairs. This is more of a Greco-Roman wrestling style of wrestling. The amateur wrestling you see in college these days, where you produce Gable Stevensons and all sorts of dogs like Bo Nichols and all them. Abraham Lincoln was the OG. 300 matches in 12 years. Apparently the guy was 299-1. That's impressive. And that's what makes a leader. I want my leader to be able to put anybody in a full Nelson, chicken wing, or a headlock like that. All right. The last thread is the billion-dollar question. And it's about this woman. Baptiste Vincini put out a thread that says this woman built Zuckerberg's $117 billion leadership team. Her secret? Spotting future leaders with one interview question. It's so effective, it scaled Facebook from 220 million to 3 billion users. Here's the question and answers that discover legends. Let's go back before Facebook. Before anyone even knew her name, this woman helped Google's revenue explode from 85 million to 20 billion in just 7 years. When Mark Zuckerberg heard about her results, he knew he needed her help, but Facebook wasn't profitable yet. In 2008, Facebook was growing fast but bleeding money. The platform had millions of users, but no clear path to revenue. They needed someone who could monetize without killing the user experience. The mission was clear. Turn social connections into sustainable business. Enter Sheryl Sandberg, Harvard grad, cool, Google's VP of Global Online Sales. By 2008, every tech company wanted her, but Facebook won. And she turned a money-losing startup into a $2 trillion giant. But her real superpower wasn't strategy or operations. It was spotting future legends before anyone else saw their potential. And she did it with just one question. Wow. I love this question because I wish every day that I was asked this question. But if you were in my role, what would you focus on? This question cut through rehearsed answers and polished resumes. It revealed how candidates really thought about leadership and impact. And here's what made it so powerful. First, it tested strategic thinking. Could they zoom out and see the whole chessboard? Did they understand which problems actually mattered? And could they prioritize between urgent and important? But there was more. It revealed empathy and perspective. Strong candidates showed they could think from multiple angles. What keeps employees motivated? What do users really want? How do investors see our future? And what makes partners trust us? The question exposed true ambition. Average candidates played it safe with textbook answers. Great ones, they showed they thought deeply about Facebook's challenges. They came ready with ideas that could transform the company. Chris Cox is one example. He started as a software engineer at Facebook, but his answer revealed something deeper. He understood how technology could bring people closer together. Today, he's chief product officer, architecting products used by billions. Or Lori Gohler. When interviewed, she didn't just answer hypothetically. She presented a complete vision for how Facebook could attract and develop world-class talent. Sandberg recognized the potential and created a new role, VP of People. The best answers? They shared 3 traits. Deep understanding of Facebook's real challenges, specific solutions that could scale, clear alignment with the mission to connect people. But here's the hidden genius. The question wasn't just about hiring. It revealed how candidates would approach leadership. Would they own problems or pass blame? Could they turn vision into action? Did they think in systems or band-aids? The best leaders don't just ask good questions, they anticipate transformative changes. Sandberg saw social media's potential before others. Today's leaders need to spot the next wave, and it's already here. The programmable economy. Just like social media transformed connections, systems are transforming businesses. They're making companies infinitely scalable. They're creating new revenue streams. They're automating the impossible. But here's what most executives miss. These systems aren't a technical decision. They are a business transformative tool. Understanding them is the difference between leading and following. This is why 300,000 plus tech leaders trust API days. No free ads. So, that's a great question. What would you do differently if you were in my role? And that's a question that I hope to get asked, and that's a question that I think about a lot. Especially when you're working in a hands-on environment where your superiors are not hands-on. They see what's on the paper, and they think what's on the paper should be easily translated into the world, but there are oftentimes factors that come in between the action actually taking place and what you need to get out of it. That's something I think about constantly. And if you want to become a leader, if you want to be a great leader, you have to think of that. Because it puts things in perspective. It doesn't allow you to ever become a boss. If you ever get put in a management or a supervision role, don't ever become a boss. Become a leader. Leaders are hands-on. Leaders stick their head in when they see things are getting rough. Leaders ask the right questions. They don't act like they know everything because nobody ever truly does. And you can forget things along the way as well. So it's important to always brush up on your knowledge and stay in touch with the people who are in touch. You have to stay you have to be in constant communication with the things that are going on. With the people who see the way that things are going on. This is so important in business, and it's so important in life. And it's hard. It's hard to find good leadership when it comes to the working environment. It's hard to find good leadership, period, but there's a lot of leadership changes taking place in a very specific zone.
Here we go! Buck, here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Yeah, here we go!
Yeah, you thought just because the Super Bowl happened and the season's over that we're done talking about football? No, we could talk about football all year long. And here's why. Right now, we're going through the coaching cycle. There's already been 6 new head coaches, okay? And we'll start at the top with Ben Johnson getting hired out of Detroit to become the Chicago Bears' new head coach. On the other side of the ball, you have Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, going to the New York Jets to become their new head coach. Ultimately sending Coach Ulbrich off into the sunset and to replace him with another defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, who had one of the highest turnover rates as a defensive coordinator coming out of the Detroit Lions. New England hired Mike Vrabel. They fired Gerard Mayo after 1 year and brought in Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel brought in Josh McDaniels to call plays as the offensive coordinator, and Terrell Williams to become their defensive coordinator. The staff out of New York, with Steve Wilkes becoming their defensive coordinator. Steve Wilkes, who came from the Carolina Panthers 2 years ago, won them games as an interim head coach, and I mean he should have earned that job from what he did a couple of seasons ago down there. Nonetheless, as we go from the Jets, we'll go to the San Francisco 49ers because Robert Saleh was fired in the middle of the season last year from the New York Jets, and now he's back in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator, where he had plenty of success. So that's going to be exciting to see how that all unfolds. Where else are we? The Las Vegas Raiders hire Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Pete Carroll as head coach and Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator after a great year with the Ohio State Buckeyes, leading them to a national championship. Lou Anarumo is heading over to Indianapolis to become their defensive coordinator. In Dallas, they held on to Mike McCarthy for a couple weeks, let a coaching cycle go through, and then they fired him and hired Brian Schottenheimer, their offensive coordinator, to become their head coach. So that's a little bit of a kerfluffle there. I mean, they really sent Mike McCarthy up the river. Last but not least, the last team remaining with a new head coach. And this is going to bring up the conversation of football for me today because I'm kind of like sick of all this. I mean, every single coach that I listed before was hired. Oh, I forgot the Jacksonville Jaguars, complete new staff over there with Liam Cohen coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after a year, or maybe was it 2 years as an offensive coordinator, leading them to the playoffs. And now he'll be in Jacksonville as their head coach. He had quite the gaffe during his opening press conference where he's like, there's a chant down there in Jacksonville. The crowd does it much better than this guy did. And he knows it. His face showed it whenever he said it because he said Duval. And that's really made its rounds on the internet. But nonetheless, the New Orleans Saints, New Orleans was where the Super Bowl was held 2 weeks ago now. And who was down there? Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, and Vic Fangio, the coaches of the Philadelphia Eagles. And somehow, some way, the New Orleans Saints managed to nab Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and I have mixed feelings about that. Granted, they ended up winning the Super Bowl, but I don't like the idea of a coach going through interviews during the playoffs. Ben Johnson did it. Ben Johnson did it. Aaron Glenn did it. Kellen Moore did it. You had plenty of coaches who were active in the playoffs who were seeking new jobs. Now, granted, when you were in the field of work, if you're going to go from job to job, you're not really going to quit your job until you secure the next one. So I understand that. But there should be something different there should be another way. They should structure this a little bit differently. I just don't like the idea of a coach who's supposed to lead a group of men taking on this extra pressure and stress in the middle of the season, especially when stakes are so high. Your team makes it to the playoffs. Oftentimes you're being courted by a team that's not in the playoffs, who fired their head coach at the immediate end of the season. I don't agree with the fact that you can talk to these people before the playoffs are over. I think once the Super Bowl ends, and this should be across the league. It doesn't matter whether your team's in the playoffs or not. You cannot interview for a head coach until after the Super Bowl. So they argue that, the Super Bowl ends and then 2 months later is the draft. Well, you have scouting departments, and I'm more than certain that these coaches are tuned in to who's playing well out of college and who's not. I'm sure they already know if they were a head coach, and this leads me to the leadership question. What would you do differently if you were in my role? We're talking about coordinators who were underneath head coaches who wanted to become head coaches themselves. You think they hadn't thought of what they're going to do if they're going to be in a head coaching role? They should already have these teams scouted. I don't think that they'd take much of a hit in the draft, and that should be a fun study. I propose we start this study by next season not opening up interviews until after the Super Bowl. But we have a coaching carousel constantly in the NFL. You're going to figure out very quickly whether or not this guy's going to lead the team or not. Give it some time. Give it some time to settle with the team that they're going to be underneath new leadership. Let's not rush into a commitment, a $100 million contract for 10 years with any type of coach that's fully guaranteed. That's the thing about these coaches' contracts is that they're all fully guaranteed. I think this gives an added amount of time to make sure the organization knows that this is the leader they want in front of their group of men. There should be another way to handle this. I can't picture, with Kellen Moore being announced less than a week after the Super Bowl to be the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints, that they weren't talking to him during Super Bowl week, which is illegal. That would be tampering. But they've got to come to some sort of resolution on this, because the teams that have made it that far in the season, they deserve the focus. And quite frankly, the teams that don't make the playoffs, who have to fire their coach, they don't deserve that extra advantage. They don't deserve the advantage of, and even look at this, like Ben Johnson ended up going to the Chicago Bears inside of the same division. What if there's some sort of collusion there? He was interviewing with the Bears before the last playoff games that the Lions played. How is that? How do you allow that? I just don't think that's. I don't think that's a necessarily kosher business practice, and I think that's something that should be looked into. But nonetheless, with what's gone on in this coaching carousel, I'm pretty confident in saying that the New England Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl next year. Underneath the leadership of Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, and Terrell Williams, I feel like they could be unstoppable. Josh McDaniels had Mac Jones at an all-pro level, had him in a Pro Bowl, Rookie of the Year season pretty much, and there's no way that he can't do that with Drake May and then some. Drake May really formed into a great quarterback by the end of his season, showed so much promise and strength. The strength of the leadership just was not there, and I think that's what Mike Vrabel provides. I mean, he brought the Tennessee Titans with Ryan Tannehill all the way to the AFC Championship to get stomped out by the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they're always going to chief. That's one thing about them and Andy Reid. But Mike Vrabel is, I think he feels a little bit vindicated going into this season. Maybe he was overlooked in the last cycle when Gerard Mayo got the job, so he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and Josh McDaniels coming back to the familiar home of New England. I'm very excited to have him back. So I'm excited to see what we have moving forward. As far as Ball with Bump and what will it be moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit of free agency. We'll talk a little bit of the draft coming up, and we'll talk a little bit of futures. We'll go through the futures and see what the sports books are saying next season is going to look like. But other than that, that's all I got for you. I feel like we had a fun-filled episode. I feel like I got to get this Philly cheesesteak out of me, and I feel like you all have heard enough of anything that I have to say today. But As always, I'd implore you to subscribe, like the video, leave a good rating on Apple, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to the podcast. Leave a comment, leave a review. Always show some love. If you have any requests, slide into the email at bookmarkswbump@gmail.com. You can find me on social media at Bump of TTS on Twitter or TCGXBump on Instagram. And as always, it's all love. God bless.
I'm a night rider. I've been riding a wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I've been riding a wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher, man.